I'm about to go to the restroom real fast.
As soon as I hit live, he goes to take a piss, of course.
I thought you were talking about you hitting not live on the YouTube end, but live just on your recording end.
No, we're live. Go. It's no big deal.
Okay.
I'm not going to start recording for the actual podcast until you get back. I'll say hello to Jenna because Jay's daddy is in the troll room. Hello. Matt's upset because we're a little early. All right, let's see. Oh my. Why are you early? I don't know. You can blame Listen, if we're late or we're early, 90% of the time it's because of Joseph. And it's only, well, I guess it is it's only like 15-ish minutes. It's not that early. We're not Joseph's in the loo, so it sounds so much more proper to say loo than it does like bathroom or toilet or something like that. I don't know why. Most British people aren't even that fancy. It's a weird like that. Is that Matt? You're from New Zealand, right? Like, is that just an American thing that we think that British people are really fancy? Is it like it's something about the way that they are on television a lot of the time? Like our interpretation of them comes from stuff like the name Downton Abbey or things like that. That would be my question. I'm not sure.
There?
Hey, I'm just either talking to myself or talking to the troll room. I'm not 100% sure at the moment.
I'm not going to worry about live streaming on TikTok tonight.
Okay, that's fine. Ain't no thing.
Yeah.
People are still quite upset about your take on the Starfield controversy. It cracks me up, dude. I'm just messing with people now. Like I was like legitimate on YouTube, at least. I was legitimately responding to some people, just being like asking them questions, or if like they were just being, I mess with them if they're just being like rude or whatever. But
did you ask them if they paint within the lines or outside the lines?
But then they're like, dude, it's the memes are getting so old too. They're like, one guy was like, upset about customization in a Bethesda game, checks notes, and like was some sort of like trying to be snarky about it. And I'm like, dude, do you not have a better response? Like, can y'all be a little more creative with this?
Yeah, dude, there was someone who was probably the hottest comment I got was actually on Instagram, and man, this guy was just teed about what I was what I said, and
was it
he was
the one?
It was
go ahead. Was it the one who was talking about like the unhinged rant or whatever?
Yes.
Yeah,
saying that I was unhinged and stuff like that. Like, I do not sound unhinged at all. Not only in my tone am I not unhinged, there is nothing I said that was unhinged. Unhinged. In fact, all I said was, I can essentially, you make it my really simple point. I can see where Az is coming from. I wouldn't have expressed it in the way that Az did,
right?
But I can totally see where he's coming from. And people are acting like I'm the one that said it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, listen, I agree. I think it's stupid, but I didn't say I agree and I think it's stupid.
Thank you.
And
for
by
your
the way,
answer,
I don't know if you saw, but Starfield is Bethesda's Bethsaida. Is that how you pronounce it?
No, Bethesda.
Bethesda.
Yeah.
Okay. Their lowest rated game ever.
I think we've been. I assume it's you that I've been talking to about this. It's really hard for me to remember these days because like stuff blurs together sometimes, like who I have conversations with.
Mhm.
I'm sure it was you. It's like the game is out of the public discourse almost completely. It was like there for a week. It probably lasted a little bit longer because of what Az did, but nobody's talking about it. And dude, I only ended up playing about an hour of it because, to be honest, I really don't have the time to put into it. I mean,
Mhm.
it's a big game, and then like there were rumors going around that you had to, to really get into the game, you had to like beat the campaign, and that's like 30, 40 hours. And I'm just like, I'm not into this enough to even warrant that. But even from the beginning, everything looks so bland and desolate, and I'm just like, this isn't the kind of sci-fi open world RPG that I want to play. I
Or apparently
actually,
anybody else.
yeah, I think a lot of people got it. It seemed like it did really well as far as those initial sales, but it's dropped off, man. I don't think this thing's got legs at all. I mean, I just don't think that it hit the culture. And honestly, I really don't think it had anything to do with like the pronouns or some of the weird stuff in there. Which I remembered. There's an anime that I haven't watched all of it, but I've seen probably 7 or 8 episodes. It's on Hulu that I think did.
SpongeBob?
No. I mentioned it a while ago in the Discord, and I can't remember how you pronounce the name, but it's sort of this like post-apocalyptic thing, and the girl in the show had her brain swapped with a guy's brain. So like surgery was like they transplanted the brain, so it's literally like the consciousness of a male inside of a woman's body. And you know how like and this is kind of the thing where one of the things that I like to talk about is how story elements or things like that are done in an interesting way. Because it's like, that doesn't bother me at all. It's like an interesting sci-fi take on that, where it's like, okay, well, like, what if you were transplanted into that? And there's like this whole thing that goes on with the main protagonist and this character, because it's like he perceives her as like a woman, but like in his head, he's still a man. So it's like, yeah, that doesn't work. So it's just, it adds like an interesting story element to it. And what Az is talking about, or was talking about, was really, it's like, no, it's just the same stuff that's shoved down your throats. And it's like, it's like no one's going to be able to convince me at this point that someone that calls them they, them is doing that because they think that they're like multiple people. Now, if you have like, if you think that you're multiple people, like I could probably understand a little bit better, but it's a ridiculous argument to be like, well, pronouns have always existed. And then it's like, so they, them, if they want to call themselves that, that's fine. It's like, okay, fine. Problem is that it's being forced on everyone. And like a couple people that we were in that thing with, they're just like, it's not being forced. And I'm like, you literally don't have a choice. And they go, well, say he. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. It's like, I'm being forced to pick.
Yeah.
That's where it's coming from. And they just like the concept of it being like, why won't you just pick? And it's like, I don't want to pick. I should not be forced into like this weird box that you want to put me in. And in all the irony, dude, from like the alphabet community of trying to force other people into boxes.
Yeah, right.
So that's all I gotta say.
I mean, it makes more sense if there's a game and it has like alien creatures in it and you're choosing it for that. Like, but it used to just be you choose your sex, right? And then in game they would just refer to you as whatever sex you chose.
Yeah.
And so when people act disingenuous when they say, well, pronouns have always been around, like, yeah, and no crap, Sherlock, like great detective skills there. That's not the conversation we're having though. You know what I mean? It's I'm just that's just such a it's one of those people where it's, oh man, if you were my brother or sister, I would just
I have to acknowledge the troll room for a second, but I'm with you, dude. And it's impossible to have these arguments nowadays. And I don't even want to say arguments. It's impossible to have discussions with people online anymore that just like see you as the enemy.
Yeah.
You making a mild take in that, and everyone is just like, not literally screaming, but like screaming in the comments about like, oh, just accept it or blah, and you're just like, whoa, like can we Can we talk? Like, they're mad that you used a Tolkien. There's like people in there that were mad that you used a Tolkien quote, and then it's like, okay, well, why are you like?
Yeah,
Explain to me.
they were trying to explain his quote to me. I'm like, I don't think you understand. I know what his quote means. I'm not sitting here. You don't have to necessarily agree with me on things, but at least do so in a to where you're not
Yes.
being unhinged. Like with that guy saying that I was being unhinged, and I said, I think it's a bit unhinged for you to say I'm being
Well,
unhinged in this.
yeah, and I was like, bro, if you think that's unhinged, you live a very, very good life. Like, if
I'm
no
like,
one's ever been even a little crazy around you, and you think someone within and what you would probably consider an offensive opinion,
yeah, people just seem
yeah, it's
so
it's ridiculous, man. It's
like
just talk.
I get extremes on both sides, like people who are overtly hypersensitive, and then those
Oh,
who are overtly like desensitized to everything.
yes.
Again, I'm not saying the middle ground is where it's at. I'm just saying there's no kind of, at least seemingly on social media, it's not kind of, let's have a reasonable discussion here. That's why
Yes.
when those come around and I see them, I try and compliment the person and say, hey, even if we disagree, I appreciate your reasoned, thought out comment.
Yeah, I try to do that. Sometimes people leave these massive comments, and I'm just like, dude, uh, really? So I get snarky with them or something like that. I would. Matt was wondering what that anime was. I canceled my Hulu subscription. Actually, I canceled like all of my subscriptions.
You're smart. You do have Paramount right now, by the way, because
Uh.
remember when you gave me Paramount
Oh, did
to
you did you?
yeah, well, my wife,
That's fine.
we
I
our
found it.
card's on your account, and so
Oh, that's fine. I mean, I don't get emails about it, so I mean, y'all,
she
if I'm not getting
reactivated it,
charged, if I'm not getting
and
charged, I
I'm
don't care.
like, well, just to let you know, you have Paramount, by the way.
Um, Matt Newman, the anime is called Heavenly Delusion, Tengoku Dai Miyako, my Daimakyo. But you can look up Heavenly Delusion and it'll get you there. It's pretty cool. Animation's great. And again, I'm always on the lookout for interesting story elements like that. And there's actually, I've been I am starting to understand why a lot of people have moved away from television and movies for their storytelling, because you're just not finding it in those places anymore. I just picked up issue 3 of Big Game, which is Mark Millar's event comic for everything that he's written up until this point.
Mm-hmm.
And it's excellent. And he doesn't, man, I can't say a whole lot, but it is, I think, because I tweeted at him about it, and I said, it's heartbreaking, like, what he does. In, like, because each one of those issues, I think it's like 20, 25 pages, something like that. Maybe not even that much. This one's, I think, going to be a little bit shorter. And I don't really know. It's cool because it's been a while since I've had any sort of entertainment that I don't 100% know where it's going, and I don't know, like, what he's planning on doing with it and how it will affect the books that he writes in the future. And I think that's really cool. It's very refreshing, unlike two of the biggest pieces of garbage on television right now.
Yes, you got that right.
Man, they're bad. But hello to Zax. Hello to Jenna. Thank you guys for stopping by tonight in the troll room. Matthew Newman as well. Sorry, Jenna. We didn't ignore you. I actually said hello, but I don't think you were at the computer. So I did acknowledge you, I promise.
And didn't we credit old Tyler Daniels on the
Yes.
last?
I mentioned it. Thank you again to Tyler Daniels for being a producer on last week's episode.
Yeah.
Um,
And if you want to be a producer on this episode, you can go to our direct.me link in our description, or if you're in the live room right now at the top of the chat, and you can donate to our show with your time, talent, and treasure. At the link, you'll find our PayPal link donation, and people who donate $100 or less automatically become producers of the corresponding episodes. Those who donate $100 or more become associate executive producers, and donations of $200 or more, you're the executive producer of the episode. And these are credits that we will vouch for and that you can put on your resume anywhere where these credits are accepted. You can also donate via your time and talent. So if you have any special talents, you're good at YouTube thumbnails or artwork, and you want to do some artwork for our podcast or to help our brand, as they say, in any way, and just mention it to me and David. You can reach out to us via email. We're on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, obviously, Twitter. So just reach out to us. The value for value system that we do is a system set up so you can return value to us in what you're perceiving the entertainment value and information value we're giving you in return. You can donate that back to us.
And thank you for everyone who has done so far. And whether you have or have not, we're happy that you're here and that you participate. And, just really thankful that people have stuck it out with us. Sorry about missing the show last week. We tried like every single night, and I think it was Wednesday or Thursday, and I just called it because I was like, we were dealing with this thing at work with a customer that has been less than delightful and very overly talkative every time we have to go over there. And man, I told my boss the other day because and I'm not going to get into the details of the story. I think I've talked to you about it, Joseph, off the stream.
Yeah.
But,
what's their ASL?
There was just a whole situation with my boss getting kind of screwed out of money in this situation, and his parents were at the house, and they would not stop yapping at me about problems with the house, and I almost went off on them, be like, well, are you aware of this situation? You know what I mean? But I was like, keep it calm. I just walked away, and I told him, I was like, dude, I had to walk away from him. I just I couldn't be around him anymore because it just it was one of those things where it's just going and being so ignorant about a situation, and then you just want to be like, you don't even know what's going on. It's what's wrong with you? It's that kind of stuff. So
yeah, no, that's the worst.
All of that being said, it's we just kept trying, and then I had a ton of work going on this weekend. But I may or may not be playing a certain DLC for Resident Evil 4 at some point this week. It won't be tomorrow because I'm going to a Goo Goo Dolls concert. But yeah, they're going to be in town, and it was sort of a last minute thing.
Who you going with?
Drew, my buddy Drew, and I don't know if
former co-host of the
no
that lame podcast.
No, it wasn't him.
This
but
is
yeah,
the better podcast for sure.
It just was one of those weeks where it was Monday, I don't think I got home until 9:30, so it would have been too late anyway.
Yeah, why don't you just stream the Goo Goo Dolls concert?
I don't know. The internet down there is going to be horrific. It's whenever an insane amount of people are in the same place and everyone's trying to use cell service at the same time, it just gets clogged.
Yeah, I feel you on that, man. Well, do you want to talk about these two turds? Which turd do you want to go with first?
We can just talk about them together because dude, I
say let's hop into Wheel of Time and then we can talk about Ahsoka because I didn't really break down the sixth one that much. I only have a few thoughts, but I did actually prepare with episode 5 of Wheel of Time.
What is even worth talking about? Because the show
is a good bit in Wheel of I wanted to take one episode and do it justice of. I'm just going to break this one down. It's not a lot. It's not a ton. And then I'll give you my overview thoughts of episode 6, and I'll do the same thing with episode 5 and 6 of Ahsoka as well. I'll just give you my overview thoughts. The only
Sure.
one I'm really going to break down more deeply, so to say, is episode 5 of Wheel of Time. Because I just don't feel like we have done that for Wheel of Time like we did that one episode of Ahsoka. I'm like,
Right.
well, maybe it would be good just to for me to do this, and you can kind of give me your thoughts as I go. But my kind of general thoughts regarding episode 5 of Wheel of Time was that the state, the positives of that episode, what were I do think from the previous episode, episode 4 and 3 and 2 and 1, that the stakes and tensions seem more defined in this episode. And we can actually understand the motivations of the characters too.
With an
Um,
episode 5 of an 8-episode series.
yes, exactly. This doesn't make it a good episode. I'm not saying it's a good
No,
episode.
no, no. But it's like,
We should have got that from episode 1.
yeah, I don't think it can even be a check mark on an episode if it's like, if we're 5 episodes in and we're now saying that we understand the stakes of the season, then it's a complete failure.
Yep. And not
There,
even the full stakes at that. I'm just saying, like, this episode itself had some stakes and tension to it compared to the other episodes lacked that completely.
yeah, okay. I
And
mean,
to
yeah,
where,
I
like,
get
okay, in this
that.
episode, I can actually understand the motivations of the characters finally, whereas I didn't understand their motivations previously. At least I didn't think that their motivations were well written.
Whose motivations are we talking about?
Oh, so I would say the protagonist and the antagonist of this episode. So you have Moraine, Rand, Perrin, as the protagonist, and do they? Okay, so Egwene, Elaine,
Yes,
Nynaeve.
yes, those are characters in what I'm
Yeah, yeah.
what
So all of theirs because they were all in that episode, and then the antagonist just really being Ishamael
Okay, but
and
you're missing what my question is. It's like you're just
okay.
naming the characters that are in there. Like, what specifically do you know now that you did not know with the previous 4 episodes? Does that make sense? Like,
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying.
what is Rand's motivation in episode 5 that is now different?
So I guess now the motivation for him and Moraine is figuring out what Ishamel wants, like what his plan is ultimately. And
Right.
I didn't really think it was real well written, at least on Rand's part, in the previous episodes, because more so his kind of arc has just been the downtrodden, I just want to stay away from everyone, don't bother me type of character, which is fine. Like, hey, I'm affecting those around me. But in this episode, we finally get something beyond just that.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I the stakes now sort of
And
exist because episode. Forgive me because these episodes run together.
And as we go through my notes here, I'll come back to that because off the top of my head, I don't remember, but I kind of list my general thoughts to begin with, and then I go to them as I talk throughout. Go
Okay,
back to them.
all right, go ahead.
All right. And then I guess kind of the other thing I pointed out in this, like most of the other episodes seem to be just let's throw a bunch of scenes at the screen and see what sticks, and hopefully the ending makes sense. And it hasn't, kind of like the CW shows, whereas
Yeah,
this episode at least seemed more coherent than the previous episodes. Um, there's a not much, mind you. Again, I'm not saying this is even an all right episode. Like this is a. I'm not even saying this
you
is
don't have to
fine.
keep
I'm
defending
just
yourself on
saying,
that
like
point.
there's,
I
at,
get I understand that you don't think it's good. I'm
like I can at
no,
least see the flow of it narratively.
yeah, I understand. Don't worry. There's no charge of saying Joseph thinks that Wheel of Time's the best show to come out this year. It's not a thing.
Yeah, you heard it. I'm just gonna release that out and just see. I'm just gonna cut that like 5 seconds just to see what people say. Um. So and then from there, they let us see what the antagonists want, along with our too many protagonists in these episodes, and kind of how each one, like what the antagonists want and what the protagonists want, kind of clash a bit. And so I think that clashing helps shape the tension of the episode.
Yeah. Uh,
And other than that, kind of like my major criticisms of it, and again, generally speaking, the main characters aren't really likable. Moraine is supposed to be this morally ambiguous character, but she's really just a jerk. Like a lot of things that she does, she's not even that smart. A lot of things that she does doesn't make much logical sense
yeah.
for the situation that's occurring.
Well, most of the stuff in the season for her is made up, as far as I'm aware. They're pulling it from future books. Again, I haven't gotten that far, so I don't know 100%. But they're just doing. She's wandering from place to place. The end of, and we're gonna. I don't think anyone cares about spoilers for this. And to be honest, if you do, this isn't the place for you anyway. Sorry, but with Moraine. Episode 5 is the one where she meets back up with Rand at the end, right?
No, that's episode 4.
That's episode.
That's where,
dude.
Episode 4 is when she cuts Lanfear.
No. Okay, well then I would.
And she meets with Rand, and they're running off, and then episode 5 picks up with them running away.
Okay, my bad. I would disagree then just a little bit. I mean, the end of episode 4 is where the stakes come into play for the arc of the season, I think, or at the very least, maybe even the major arc throughout the entire whatever's left of the series moving forward.
Yeah.
And 4 is also when Nynaeve gets stuck in the door.
Yeah,
just funny to say.
The 3 ways or whatnot. Whatever.
Episode 4, the one where Nynaeve gets stuck in a door. Yeah. I think that, so this show, along with Ahsoka, part of the problem that they have is that it's not just about stakes for me. It's about the motivations of the characters. And I won't go too much into it with Ahsoka, because at least with Ahsoka, I can pull some sort of understanding from that. I mean, don't get me wrong, people. It's not a compliment. It's just that with Wheel of Time, I don't know. Okay, so I kind of. It's tough, right? Because I can't take Wheel of Time solely from what's being shown, because I kind of understand the characters from the perspective of the books.
Right.
For instance, like with Rand, I don't know what his motivation has been at all this season.
Yeah, outside of the only motivation he has seemed to have is, I want to stay away from my friends so I don't hurt them.
Right.
That's really it.
So
now he's finally coming into a motivation of, which has stemmed from, wasn't even his own agency. It was from Moraine giving him guidance. Okay, fine, whatever. And now it's finally, what does Ishamael really want? Shamiel, whatever his name is.
Zach's in the troll room was like, "You guys love Wheel of Prime." Noted.
But you are right. It's difficult to.
That's my biggest
determine
problem.
Their motivations.
That's my
along
biggest
with
problem
the plot
with the
and the world building deficiencies.
Yeah, and it's all stemmed from the fact that they've completely butchered any idea of what any of the characters in this show are motivated by. Like what they're all kind of wandering through this world. And dude, every time I see Rand, I'm like, I forget that he's in the show sometimes, and then it's like, oh right, he's supposed to be the main character.
Yeah, I think again, I really think what plagues them is this idea, and maybe I'm wrong, but this attempt to do this Game of Thrones narrative where you have these, different characters in these different places going through their own stories and eventually meeting up in one central place all together.
Yeah.
Right? The protagonist and the antagonist. I get that, but like what Game of Thrones did great is it really stayed in 2 locations in the first season. And you got to know your characters more, and I just don't really.
Well, okay, so it's a little more than just that. Game of Thrones.
Yeah, of course it is.
Well, it's not the first one that I was going to say, but it's not really an excuse because there's insane amounts of source material for Wheel of Time as well. But they did stick pretty close to the source material, at least the best that they could. They had to cut here and there, and In hindsight, there's a lot of stuff I think that people wish they had spent more time on, but they did try to do that. They also had good actors and actresses in it. You had people who would have been considered kind of like, I think the idea is that they were like Shakespearean. There's a lot of British actors that were in the show that, I mean, they are they've just been doing what they've been doing for a very long time, for lack of a better way to put it. And you don't have that with Wheel of Time at all. No one is. I don't find any of the performances compelling at all.
Yeah, no one really commands the screen.
They don't seem to.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's kind of like Harry Potter. We were watching it yesterday, and every time Alan Rickman comes on screen, he just kind of commands the attention.
Well, exactly. I mean,
the camera,
and that goes back to it, man. Is that it's like there were, rip Alan Rickman. There were and are very well-versed actors out there who know how to do things. They can work with material, and you really need that. And everyone in this show is just sort of like they're all very young. One of the biggest problems with the show is that the showrunners or whoever's writing, it's probably a mix of all of them. They're way too focused on the Aes Sedai.
Yes.
And the Aes Sedai just aren't that interesting. There's not enough material. They're essentially they're wizards, right? That's just kind of that they're a collective of women who use magic. And they've been around for a long time, and they have lore and like some of that stuff. As an idea, it is interesting. The problem is that the show is so desperate to make them the centerpiece of everything, especially this season. And it's not that interesting. They're like going through. Is it the White Tower? That's what it's called, right?
Yeah, the
Am
White
I right
Tower.
about that? They spend so much time in there, and it's just like there's nothing interesting or really magical. I mean, despite what I think about Harry Potter, I remember, especially when I was younger watching those movies, you get the sense of awe and wonder around Hogwarts. And they're in the fantasy setting. That's one of the things that I think really does attract people. And this show doesn't do that at all.
No, it doesn't. And that's what I mean by plot and world building deficiencies right there in that kind of CW level writing. Because even though we can criticize Harry Potter and say, hey, I don't think this holds up as well as like we all probably typically viewed this at the time that came out. At least there are interesting aspects. The world's interesting. Hogwarts itself is its own character. I know that's cliche to say, but it really does take its own character. But I think you're right in that this show, along with Ahsoka, makes interesting boring. And I will say, though, I think there are some actors in this show that are doing the best with the material they have. I think it's less of, not all of them, but I think it's less of the actors and more of the writing and directing.
I mean, I guess, man.
Personally.
I
think Rosamund Pike does a good job for the material that she has. I think, as Zach pointed out, I think that the guy that plays Rand, he seems to trying to be doing a good job, as Zach puts it.
Man, there are a lot of people in the world that put a lot of effort into the work they do, and they're still not very good at it.
Yeah, I just think for me, I don't know if they're making the best of a worst case scenario. That's where I kind of fall in line, because it's like you look at Ahsoka and the lady that plays Ahsoka, Rosario Dawson.
Yeah.
Okay. She's a great actress. She's not terrible.
Well, that's the thing, is that we have. That's why I said it's like these are all unknowns, and that is part of the problem, and because you are essentially what is it? Is the term like wet around the ears or whatever? Where it's like you're just a newbie at this thing, like you're coming into this
Right.
industry. This is like your first gig, and the problem is that this is a massive show that they've spent a lot of money on, and they were riding on the backs of Rosamund Pike, who is not exactly an A-lister.
Right.
She's not. She's really. I mean, she's one of those
It's not an Ian
actresses that, like,
McKellen.
right. If you looked at her, someone might go, "Oh yeah, I kind of know. I think she looks familiar, but I can't place her." Right. That's kind of the category
Yeah.
that she falls into. And you're right. It's not Ian McKellen, but also it's one of those things. It's like he took that role of Gandalf to the next level. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yep.
actors and actresses, and this is the thing. It doesn't matter like where you are, whether you're like an amateur actor, or like you're kind of new to the industry, or you're a veteran. It doesn't matter what your role is, whether you're the lighting guy, the DP, whatever the case may be. Yeah, you want to do your best. But what I'm gathering, and I'll give the actors a little bit of like relief here. It's like, because they probably can't speak out too much about this right now. They're under contracts, and I'm sure there's some stuff in there that's like they can't just be like bad mouthing the show
Yeah. Right.
for whatever
Probably wouldn't do
reason.
good for the numbers.
But there's just and this goes beyond Wheel of Time, but there's this lack of understanding, and again, why like the Hollywood strikes don't mean anything to me, because it doesn't change. It doesn't change anything, and it wouldn't change anything unless, the old guard basically was gone now, and they actually were looking for people who were interested in the material that they're writing about.
Yeah.
Um,
Not just trying to push an agenda.
Yeah. There's a million examples of content that's like, it doesn't matter how simplistic the story is, like, or how new the actors and the actresses are to the material. I just watched this horror movie, Talk to Me, last week, and it definitely falls into like the 7-8 range for me. It's very well made. It's an hour and a half long. It knows exactly what it's trying to do, and all of the quite young actors are playing their roles very well. And that's why it's hard, even in a show like this. I don't know if a feeling is not the best way to do it, but I don't feel it from anyone in this show. Whether that's because they just don't know how to do it, they haven't really been told properly how to do it, if the script is just not making a lot of sense to them, and so they're just like, well, I know I'm in a magic castle and I have to wave my hands around and do but everyone just, and it's the same problem that Ahsoka really has in many cases, that it's like nothing, the beats don't hit for anything that they're trying to do, which really sucks, because I don't know if they're going to do it this season, but their Perrin has a very like defining moment that I'm pretty sure it was supposed to happen either in the first, maybe it wasn't the first book. I get a little bit of that confused, but he's got a defining moment that is coming up that for me was one of my favorite parts early in the books, and I just like it almost gets to the point where I'm just mad now that they're even going to attempt to do it, because it's just not earned. They haven't, any of the plot points in this, they just haven't earned anything. It's just like, oh, surprise, this thing is happening, and you're like, okay, it's like you, friggin', not Nynaeve, Egwene is getting like tortured in the most recent episode, and it's just like, all right, great, like, you haven't established her as someone that I'm supposed to really enjoy or care about, so like, sure, there's stakes. Sure,
Why is
there's
this happening now?
yeah. It's like, it's like you can see like, okay, sure, there is now something that is at stake for certain characters in this, but it's like, but I don't care
But it's out of
about
place.
them.
Yeah.
I just don't care about the characters.
And that was my other negative. Was we talked about it with the Suicide Squad movie, the one that James Gunn directed, is what he does a great job at is characterization, getting you to care for the characters. Even the overall narrative is and the plot is subpar, you care for the characters, you're invested in
Yeah.
them, and that's what's missing from this. Is like you're not really there in Ahsoka as well. There's nothing that you can attach yourself to them with. I would actually argue there's more in Wheel of Time where you can attach to the characters with and kind of understand with than Ahsoka. Um, but in episode 5, I'm going to go back a bit. You have the opening scene, and the High Lady is admonished by the rulers of the Sanchan. So I think that's how you pronounce it, the Sanchan, whatever. And they have those over exaggerated nails, and it opens up, and she gets her fingernails cut off, right, for questioning
Oh
him or whatnot.
yeah.
And I really just don't understand what's the point of the nails and why is this supposed to be significant. I think what they're trying to get across is that by her kind of questioning him and then groveling, realizing what she's doing, that this is supposed to be some type of prestige loss for her
Well,
or some
sure,
kind of
but
lessening. Go ahead.
you're correct. I mean, I don't think there's like a ton to dig into there. It's like the idea is supposed to be that that's a way of like punishing them as like it's a status symbol, right? So
Right.
the same way that like you could take it from like Samson cutting off his hair, right?
Right.
Now that was more aligned to his strength, but there is something to that that's like that it was a symbol of status to some degree, and
Cultural shame.
yeah, and the problem with it is it's really stupid.
Yeah, it's stupid, and also it's like, well, how does this caste system within the Shanshan work? You know,
Yeah, they don't. Well, and again, that's a thing where this varies from Wheel of Time because those books will take the time to really detail out a lot of what's going on, and you can do that in a book, but you can also be creative with that in a show and be subtle about certain things, and they're too upfront about the way that they handle that stuff where it's just in your face. It's just like and again, it's like there's a good story can get you to care. Like if your actor is on point and if your script is on point, a scene like that can get you to understand and care about the situation that is currently happening.
Right.
I think some of that requires you to have already put in work with defined characters. So you're already on board with this idea that, okay, I really like all these characters. The show's done a really good job with all of them. So when they introduce new characters, you're kind of already immediately invested in the potential for those characters to move forward. And so anything that happens to them, you're like, oh man, like what's going on? And so if they're ripped away from you really quick, it may not be the like most dramatic thing ever, but at the same time, you're invested in what's going on with everything.
Mm-hmm.
There's characters in. We go back to Game of Thrones a lot. I guess it is kind of at least early Game of Thrones. But there's characters that are only in the show for 8 episodes of Game of Thrones or whatever, and they are horrifically removed from it, and you're just like, it's one of those things that it's so powerful. The way that it's all like the setup and the outcome, season 1 through 5 ish, I would say, is really where a lot of that is the strongest.
Mm-hmm.
That you're just on board for everything that's going on.
Yeah.
It's just kind of the biggest thing for me right now. But like Mark Millar does that with a lot of his storytelling too, where he builds up characters. You find them likable for different reasons. And then occasionally he horrifically removes one of them from the story. Yeah. And you're just like, oh, dang. But at the same time, you're like, okay, well, that worked. And it sucks that they're gone. There's always
But it makes sense. It's not done just to subvert your expectations. There's a
flow
to the narrative to where it makes sense.
Mm-hmm. And
it's not illogical and just out of place. Like, hey, let's shock the audience right now.
Yeah, I think with Wheel of Time and Ahsoka, I just sit there sometimes. I'm just like, well, why? Are these just throwaway lines because it's your lazy attempt at world building? I mean, there's a big one.
And
from
on
this.
that note, you talk about why. The next point in the opening scene I had was what, and this brings back to a criticism you had on the earlier episodes of the season. What's the whole point with the Horn of Valir? Why does the king want the MacGuffin so bad?
Oh, have they not talked about that?
Why is it important? Why does the king need it? I
Do
think they
you
have
know?
briefly. I think it was a throwaway line, like to where it commands the army of the dead. I want to say.
Uh, it goes a little bit beyond that, but I don't know. I mean, it's not really a spoiler, but it essentially it would. It's not just the army of the dead. It's like the heroes of the past.
Okay,
It's
so
like,
and that's why I'm trying to understand as someone who hasn't read the
and
books.
see, this is the
Why?
problem for me because I know some of this stuff. I'm not always tuned in to when it's like, have they really even? You know what I mean? Because I'm like, I know that, but the horn is background noise for this season.
Well,
And it's
and
supposed to.
exactly, it seems like it's supposed to be important
It's very important. It's like
since it was in the early episode, and
yeah.
that's why I'm saying, why does he want it so bad? Why does he need it? Why is he so interested in it? And then we cut to the next
Oh no
scene,
no
which
no,
is,
Joseph, you don't understand though. We have to get back to the Aes Sedai.
and that's the other thing is there's too many cuts, and that goes back to understanding the culture of this Sanchin. And I don't need an hour long episode to do that. That's not what I'm
Dude,
talking
these
about.
episodes are
But
nearly an
like,
hour and 10 minutes long each.
you can feed into like at least stay somewhat within the setting and feed it to where, okay, you open with that scene with her getting her nails chopped off. Okay, well, let's like show me, don't tell me why this is important. You know what I mean? Show me, don't tell me the caste system and what's involved in this. Like we get a bit more of that in episode 6 and understanding the demone or whatever, and
Right.
whatever else, that like one's the owner and the other one isn't even a slave. It's more like a pet. Um,
Well, listen, I hate to rush you through this, but we're about 40 minutes in, and I'd like to get
yeah, no,
it. You know what I mean?
yeah, you want to get the One
Well,
Piece?
yeah. And I do want to talk
Well, let me
about.
talk about this scene then.
Okay.
Okay, the scene with Moraine. There's a couple scenes I want to talk about with episode 5 that just bothered me. All right, one of the scenes is with Lorraine. Moraine, I'm sorry.
Moraine.
Yeah,
Moraine.
Moraine. They're running away from Lanfear, right? And they happen to come upon a random farm that just so lucky. Makes sense. Okay. They have 4 horses, no big deal there. And Moraine runs into the lady that's there as she's getting the horses, right? And she says, "You're gonna have to come with us because I'm an Aes Sedai and you have to obey my commands or whatever. And we're gonna kill the 4th horse, right? So that Lanfear doesn't run after them." Now, this doesn't make any sense because the 4th horse could have just come along with them. That happens like all the time
Yeah,
in
they could have just
situations. Not,
brought it. Yeah.
yeah, and then on
Well,
top of
yeah, it's their attempt at trying to continue to make her sort of like,
morally gray.
yeah, morally gray, and it
Oh,
just, yeah, it's
does it
like, all
work?
right.
And
Yeah, an extra horse could be useful. You know what I mean? I don't
yeah, and then
know. Ugh, yeah. Ugh.
it doesn't make her a likable character. And then it's negated by Lanfear. Literally, when she gets there, she sees the horse, and then very conveniently, a man happens upon it on a horse, and she just pops his head off. Uh,
Yeah. I don't know, and I'm not.
so, and it's like it's one of those things. We don't know as the audience. I don't know. Am I just supposed to assume Lanfear has no other way to travel? She's this forsaken. There's all these magical abilities in this world.
There's like a big. Uh, so in the books, there is
Portals.
something. It's not, as far as I'm aware, it's not like Witcher portals,
Okay.
but there are points that take you from the way that I understand it to other dimensions where time works differently.
Okay.
So
Well, I did think that horse, that guy riding on that horse. I
yeah.
thought that was just convenient.
Well,
for the
and
plot to move
and
forward.
in the books, that's how Ran meets. You keep calling her Lanfear, which still hasn't
Moraine.
been. No.
No, Celine.
Celine. He meets
Yeah, she
Celine.
is Lanfear.
I'm yeah, that's not what I was saying. She isn't called that yet in the
Oh,
or
gotcha.
at this point she's not even, this is not supposed to be a thing. Like, it's just not. They're just they are rushing through a ton of this stuff. Yeah, they get transported to one of these other places and they're not sure how they got there, how to get back, and they run into her. And like that, the idea being that, okay, why is this incredibly attractive woman hanging out in this other dimension? And like the idea behind it is that like they kind of got stuck there, and so the assumption is that she also got stuck there. She's essentially like, I guess her character like type really is like the femme fatale, especially now that I've been made aware of who she really is. And so like, you know, Ran, you know, he's clearly attracted to her. There's like this back and forth, and you're like, oh, is she cool or is she not? She does some things that are suspicious, but that could just be like her own characteristics. It might not necessarily be because she's trying to like put one over on them. And obviously we know the truth now, and they didn't even want to take the time to build up that relationship like that. They're like, let's just let him bang in an inn for, you know, 4 episodes before we, you know, change direction with this.
Yeah.
And it's like, we don't care. Like, you know, they don't build her up in any way to like really care about her. She's an innkeeper until she's not. Exactly.
Well, I love that scene is then followed up with Wolf Boy and Wolf Man, whatever that dude's name is, and I'm not gonna go into that scene. I really don't care, except for I just want to say those wolves do not look like wolves at all. They look like dogs.
Yeah, they do.
Bad job.
Well, yeah, it's probably it makes me feel like it's a budget thing with stuff like that.
I don't care, dude. There's a way.
Yeah.
Come on.
And
I'm calling it out. That's just like,
for sure.
Hey, they're very good looking dogs. Okay.
That's what it seems like, is that they were just like, maybe we'll just skimp on the budget here, you know?
Yeah, they should have just fired a writer, save it there.
And well, yeah, and you had like the weird like translucent visions that are supposed to be like the wolves talking to these guys. Yeah, and it's like, oh, that's how they speak to us. And I'm like, y'all couldn't have just like done a telepathic thing, or like just done something that isn't as bad looking as this. Like, at this point, I think the wolf just talking to him in some way, or even if they didn't put that in there and they just make eye contact with each other, and he's like, oh, he's talking to me now, and here's he told me his name, and it's not this like weird woo thing in the sky. You know, it just and it looks bad. That's the problem. It looks like the same kind of graphic from Love and Thunder. You know, when they have that kid's head in that one scene. Just super low budget.
Well, hey, let's talk about these next few scenes real fast. All right, so it cuts to the next scene, which is Lanfear still chasing them, right? And she goes past them. It zooms in on this rock, right? And you see Rand and Moraine appear out, and they have an honest conversation. And she tells him that Ishamel is the leader of the Forsaken, and if he releases all the Forsaken, then they will lose the last battle. So my question is why isn't Ishamel freaking focused on releasing all of the Forsaken so he can win the last battle, since releasing Lanfear was really easy from the looks of it, at least from what the show showed us.
Yeah, he just said some magic words and she showed up.
Yep. And then Moraine indicates that this would be the worst thing to ever happen in their world. So why isn't she immediately trying to solve that problem? So, and if she is, they haven't done a good job of letting me know that at least. And the next scene's Wolf Boy again, and he's going into the town. And this is actually going to harken back to when we were talking about in Rings of Power, like, hey, it would have been nice to see that battle between the elves and the orcs, to see how the orcs overtook them and captured them, right? Well, in this, it's mentioned as Wolf Boy enters in the town where Uno's body is, that the White Cloaks have drove back the Sanchin. That would have probably been, interesting to see, how they did it, and being able to understand the size and the scope of the White Cloaks. Because at this point, I thought they were pretty much done in the last season.
Oh, that's right. They do pop back up. They came back, and I was like, I thought that guy died.
Yeah, that's me too. I thought that dude, the leader guy, died as well.
I
And so
just whatever, man.
you have that along with that Aiel lady. I don't really remember the significance of the Aiel, but whatever. And then you have that Dane who's like one of the white cloak leaders, that white dude. Um and he basically mentions to Perrin that she was in the wrong place at the wrong time. That's why she was
Sure.
captured. And yet when he goes to release her, he shows up there with like 10 or 12 guards and, is like, hey, this IL is extremely dangerous. I'm like, well, if she was so dangerous, why wasn't she being guarded? Especially after he found out that Perrin, didn't think she should be caged, you know? Um, and as far as the white cloaks pushing back the Sanchin, there's also another comment that that guy that got killed last season, appeared to get killed last season, said was that he planned on pushing back the Sanchin and Falma, or Falm or whatever it's called. And it's like, okay, I think now that this season's progressing to, it's pushing to this major battle that's going to take place between these various armies and factions, but we don't really know the size and positions and objectives of each of the armies and factions within. At least I don't. I don't know if you do. Based off of just what they've shown us of the Wheel of Time. So I had that noted down. What do you think about that?
You're just way more invested in this than I am.
I was just trying to actually analyze. You know what I mean? I wanted to analyze this.
Sure. Just it doesn't nothing. None of it means anything to me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's nothing.
What do you think about that scene with Lanfear? I don't know if you noticed this, but she so she went past Rand and Moraine, right? And she keeps going down that road and she runs into that lady, and she the lady's like, I'm not going to say anything after they have this conversation. And she's like, I know you won't. And she sews her mouth shut. I'm like, why didn't
I
she pop
remember
off her
that.
head? Because it's like, this lady knows more
Oh,
about
no,
what's
well, it's
going on than that other dude did. And it's like, can she just cut her mouth back open?
So maybe it's the perception of variety. So like this is something that Multiverse of Madness and sort of Doctor Strange in general does as well. And when you don't what's the best way to put this? When you don't build your magic systems properly,
yeah,
and you just it's kind of it's magic. Okay, it's like the same concept that we
off
get.
to me.
Okay,
It
so
just seemed weird.
Hang on,
Like she blew this dude's head off, and then she does that.
It's the same kind of concept when we hear from people all the time where it's like fantasy, don't think about it too much. That's like the thing behind it, is that it's like I'll just say it like this because I don't know a better way to say it. And most like normal people who watch this stuff, they're just going to be like, right, it's magic. Of course she can do something like that. But from potentially our perception, it's like, okay, well, if she has a spell that's more effective, like you're saying, and she doesn't really care about human life, then yeah, why would she just sew her mouth shut instead of popping the head off again? And the idea behind it is it's variety. Because if you're just going around, but it's not, I'm not defending it. I'm saying it's stupid. The idea
like Voldemort going around saying Avada Kedavra.
Well, we talk about this with Harry Potter all the time. You're right, where it's like, why don't Avada Kedavra? It's an unforgivable curse. It's like, well, why? It's effective. It's essentially like saying if it's the idea of like bringing a knife to a gunfight in that where it's like, okay, they have a spell that if it hits you, you're dead, and you're saying that you're not going to use it because it's unforgivable for some reason. And then to be fair, there might be something I'm missing from the Harry Potter books, but as far as I'm aware, it's like there's nothing in there that is clear about why it's unforgivable other than it just is. You're just supposed to understand, like, oh, good wizards don't use this. It's like, well, why not? And it's just because, don't think about it too much. It's that kind of mentality. And, it'd be funny. I haven't read the Harry Potter books in a while. It would be funny if her writing is significantly more influential on the kind of garbage that we get today than we realize.
Yeah.
Like if she's actually, because she was very influential for the time. So it would be interesting if that was the case.
Well, I don't know if you noticed this too,
Probably
but
not.
Lanfear kept going. She went past the lady, just continue to drive in that direction or ride in that direction, rather than turning around, going after Moraine and Rand, which seemed to be the more logical conclusion now that you know that they don't have horses.
Yeah.
But anyway, real fast, I thought so we can move on from this crap. I thought it was probably the worst scene to me was when Leandrin and Nynaeve, I should say, Egwene. Man, these names in here, dude. Egwene and Elaine are in the ways, and none of them, when they realize they've been captured by Leandrin, none of them ask the basic questions like you would think you would ask, like, "What did you do to us? Where are you taking us? What's going to happen when we get where we're going?" Like, you know what I mean? It was just um, a freaking dumb conversation about how Leandrin used the one power to attack them. I'm like, why would that be on the forefront of your mind? Like, you're just figuring out that this lady's a Black Aja. So, yeah. I don't know. That scene just bothered me so bad.
All right. Is that
I'm
it?
reading over this real fast since you're rushing me like you always do. I thought it was dumb that Brown Aja had that eidetic memory. I thought that was just a plot convenience.
Okay. Well, that's fine, man.
Yeah, we can move on. That's fine. Made all this go to waste. I had some good material here too.
Well.
So we want to talk about Ahsoka real fast, so I can just say this on that first episode with episode 5, I should say, with Anakin in it. Anakin was just used as bait, nostalgia bait.
Oh, dude, it worked like wonders again though for like 10% of anyone.
And then apparently Ahsoka is amphibious and she can breathe for a long time. I guess that's about her species. I don't know.
Well, it's man, it's like I've been telling
you.
And
apparently she was contemplating self-deletion. And I didn't realize that.
Yeah, and this is the problem is that if and this is again, it's the problem with Dave Filoni, it's the problem with the series. And all these people who are just like losing their minds over specific visuals that are going on. It's like there's nothing, there's no meat to it. It's like, oh, it looks so good. And then these people who are like, I don't know who it is. I guess at this point I have to just go with the assumption that it's real people and that they really believe this stuff. Like Mahler retweeted this guy who was like, oh, this is the best cinematography in Star Wars ever. And it's just like,
come on.
It's a simple, and I can't remember, maybe it's Desperoo who said it. But it's like as someone who edits quite a bit, it's just cut frames. So you have a scene of Hayden Christensen walking in the fog. You cut very quickly to someone in a Darth Vader costume, and you line them up properly. Like, this is that, dude, honestly, it's the kind of editing that any random person who, like, knows how to edit on TikTok, they could cut something like that together. And, like, this is where we're at now, and this is a bigger conversation, ultimately, about sort of, like, the discourse around the show and where we've kind of come. I'll just say with cinema, whether we're talking about television or movies, it's just lowest common denominator stuff that like, and I say this is like the royal we, I guess, just in general. But we, or people, they praise flashy lights and nostalgia bait, jangling keys. But then the second that you question this stuff, it's like they lose their minds and they don't have you just don't understand. Or like if you watched Clone Wars and all of Rebels, you'd understand. And it's like, well, I'm
I don't
definitely
want
not
to do
going to do that.
homework.
I'm just definitely not going to do that for this. Like you, and this is something
That's
that
what makes One Piece so great is that
mm,
you can watch it, you understand the characters' motivations, the plots, all the different characters are interesting, and I don't have to go watch another show to understand what's going on
yeah,
or to
it's a
understand everything within the plot and stuff like that. Like
yeah.
like other than Ezra being Sabine's friend, right? I don't know why he's so important. Why does she need to risk everything in order to find him outside of him being her best friend? You know, at the fate of the universe, because as they tried to build Thrawn up to be, was this, you know, maniacal kind of um, Thanos-like figure, you know, for lack of a better
Yeah. Wow,
term.
what a wet fart of an entrance, huh?
Yeah, dude, it was so
W-
bad, and I don't
Any
really have a I don't have a problem like if someone's not going to appear menacing like in their physical looks, they need to be menacing in other ways, and they just don't
you know
capture that
the
at all.
the one thing that they haven't done with him yet trope wise is he hasn't killed one of his own people to show his like authority.
Dude,
You know what I
he should
mean?
just killed Sabine. Honestly, it's like
Um
he didn't care if her and
yeah.
Ezra died anyway, and he sent, you know, and that's the thing. The
Okay.
story in episode 6 contradicts itself because he sends Balin and his Padawan after them, and it's like, well, you already mentioned that you already know. And I think he mentioned at that point. If he doesn't mention it, he at least knows in his mind because he mentions it later that he has low resources. So why not keep the mercenaries? Why didn't you already kill Sabine? If you're gonna let Sabine go, why'd you give her
Dude, it
her lightsaber back to make her more formidable? And then if you wanted to get Ezra anyway, he was only a mile down the road. Why didn't you just go find him yourself if you had intel on his last known location?
it doesn't make sense. Like, okay, so yeah, you're right. There's all of that stuff is weird. It's like sure he's got low resources, but it's like it can't be that low if he's managed to keep what looks like hundreds or thousands of stormtroopers alive for the last like 12 years.
Yeah.
Like
Or
what?
that ship operating pretty well.
Yeah, and the or it's like dangling on a rock. Dude, it's very weird. And you know, one of the things that I wanted to talk about this week, and you know, maybe we'll dive into it more in another episode. But you know, there's this idea that comes up every once in a while where people will criticize us and be like, "You need it's called suspension of disbelief." Like you and the idea that it's my fault or your fault that the writer didn't do a good enough job in making the world that they're creating believable.
David, it's about space wizards, bro. Anything can happen,
Dude.
dude. It doesn't have to make sense, bro. Come on. Come on, bro.
Yeah, so you have a lot
That's
of
what I'm just gonna start saying to
yeah,
you.
and
It's
then
just a
like
fantasy show, David.
right, and you have that like you were saying, you have this whole thing where okay, so let's just say like for whatever reason we believe that Thrawn just didn't want to use the resources to go find Ezra because he's not currently a threat to him. Whatever, I still think that's stupid. You could easily send out like a team of 10 people in a scouting party.
But isn't
To
he the
deal with
guy
him.
that banished Thrawn to that universe?
Uh,
That's
yeah,
what they
but
said.
it was like I'm pretty sure he just like used the space whales or something to do it. Like it wasn't like he used some sort. I don't think he used the force necessarily to do it. Like he kind of had to sacrifice himself to. And I
But
never
again,
finished
what if
Rebels, so it's like I have no connection to anything going on with this. And again,
yeah,
it's part of the problem because
a
Rebels
show
is
that was on Disney XD, by the
yes,
way. It wasn't even
Rebels
on mainline Disney.
Rebels is a different show that should have had a beginning and an ending. And if you're going to pick up a series that is somewhat of a sequel to that, you need to be able to bring in new people, not with the old series, but with the new series. Their reaction to watching Ahsoka should be like, well, now I want to go back and watch Rebels to see the backstory behind all of this. Not, well, if you watched the 4 seasons of Rebels, you'd understand the show. Because
Exactly.
what's happening is that you're blaming the audience for your
Lack
mistakes
of
and
right.
your inability to create something that works within itself.
Yep.
Now, it's to be fair, to some degree, it's different because there's a lot of, there's arguments to be made within that, but, most people aren't going to go into, they're not going to go, I want to watch Lord of the Rings, but I'm just going to skip Fellowship and I'm going to go straight to Two Towers and then complain because they don't understand what's going on. Because there is that, but what you're talking about is a TV series that is a way bigger investment so that I can understand 8 episodes. Also, your 8 episodes aren't very good, so why on earth would I even want to go back at this point just to try to prove extra points to you about why the stuff that you've put up here isn't very good?
Yeah, so when you create shows or TV or movies and it's based off of a source material, right? Like the idea is you should be creating it with the diehard fans in mind, right? And then from there you're creating it from the general audience.
Sure,
so I think. Go ahead.
You have to stay faithful to some degree. Now, this is tough for me with these kind of projects because I don't think Dave Filoni is a very good writer or director. It's hard to gauge this properly because this show has, of the people that are watching it, there is a, let's just say it's 50-50 for easy math. 50% of the people watching this are just obsessed with the visuals and the jangling key effects of things.
Yep.
And
there's nothing wrong with nostalgia and that stuff when it's used well within the story. I think there's a good way to do it, right? Like I think Spider-Man No Way Home did it well.
You know what's a really good example of something that came out recently that used nostalgia well? Is Blink
Spider-Man No Way Home?
No, it's Blink 182's new song, the music video for their new song. They have a massive fan base, and their new song cuts through a bunch of stuff from the past. So it's about half the video is them and all the backgrounds are changing to different music videos they've put out over their run, and then they showed clips from concerts and stuff of them when they were younger or whatever. It's brilliantly done for nostalgia purposes. Plus I think the song's really good. And again, a totally different thing. Shut up, Whoopa. There's the troll room. There's ways to do it for sure. The problem is that, and you posted something in the Discord recently where you were showing that thing about she had a gray cloak and then something happened and then she had a white cloak and she returns, and it's that stuff is so you can't use stuff like that when you haven't really earned it, or if it's if your product turns out to be completely forgettable or trash or whatever the case may be, stuff like that just. And I get it because creatives like to do little homages to things that they like. But when that's all that your fan base is talking about is these little homages or these jangling keys or these, it's my brain, it just rots my brain.
It seems like this show was just made for social media clips. That's it. The actual show itself is terrible, but if you take a portion of the clip out, and to just post out there on social media, then you can get people talking about it, and that's what's cool and amazing. But the actual, for someone like me who's not a diehard Star Wars fan,
sure,
who's a normie, bro, I ain't gonna go watch 4 seasons of Rebels to understand this show.
No.
Capture me, let me know what's going on. I don't think that they could easily do flashbacks, and they don't have to retell Rebels in the flashbacks. They can just show new scenes or maybe a bit of an extended scene from a scene in Rebels to help us understand more about Ezra and his connection with Sabine and some other different characters within that.
I think that flashbacks can be a problem though, because I think it can be really lazy writing. They works in some cases.
I agree with you. I think they can be lazy writing.
I think in this instance, you can't. It's one of those things. It's oh, well, they could just do that's the mentality
I'm just saying it would be better than what we have right now.
I
Like, at least we'd be
guess.
able to
Well,
see and understand Sabine's connection with Ezra. I'm not saying that's what they have to do.
no,
I'm just saying,
I think that we would have been able to understand her connection with Ezra because we learn she has some sort of connection with someone named Ezra, right? Like we do get that early on. The problem is,
well, I mean,
is that
like,
it's
what
not
makes him
executed.
important? Why is he so
Well,
important for her to forsake everyone? What's central to him?
that's
Um,
that's
that kind of deal.
that's fixed in a show that uses dialogue properly.
Right.
You don't like that's the thing is like I just flashbacks need to be able to fill in points that cannot be made in the current like timeline. So, for instance, like, and we can get into it with One Piece. I'm tired of talking about it,
Let's
Ahsoka
do
or
it.
whatever, but it's a good transition too. In One Piece, they use flashbacks to fill out the characters in something that you wouldn't be able to get otherwise, right? It's not you don't. I don't think you get the same punch with Sanji, Luffy, and Zoro and Nami. Now, who's the other one?
Cody,
no,
Kobe.
No. Hang on. His name. He has a slingshot. His name's just slipping my mind.
Oh,
I know the chat. Usopp.
Usopp. That's it.
Usopp was kind of the weakest story for me. It works, but I think that the other four characters in the show were just significantly more interesting in their motivations, their backstories, their personalities. I found to be a lot more interesting. But his stuff works well enough for me. I actually think that his Usopp's love interest I found to be a little bit more interesting than him.
Yeah,
like her whole story.
What's
I thought,
her name?
yeah, her name's slipping my mind right now. Sorry, I'm not.
Kaya.
Kaya. So I'm gonna pull this up. So there are quite a few characters, and I am not crazy familiar with One Piece. Wait, this is not the anime. Seriously? Give me live action, please. Live action. I think that. Okay, so let me put it this way: as far as when you do flashbacks is concerned, I think that doing flashbacks in Rebels, or not, excuse me, in Ahsoka would probably be very lazy versus as the intentionality behind doing it in One Piece and the need to do it to add character to everyone that we're seeing in the present so that we understand like where they came from, right? Because we get motivations for them, we're introduced to the characters, and then we're getting a little bit of, well, hey, here's some things that you might need to know to bring things forward. I think that one of the things about One Piece, because like I'm not as like hot on this show as I think everyone else is. I'm almost like, and we've talked about it a little bit off the show. I'm almost a little frustrated that there are a lot of people who are loving this show but still refuse to watch Arcane. And I'm just like, I don't I'm just like, you don't, at this point, I'm like, you don't have an excuse.
Like, this show for me is like an 8. Okay. And whereas Arcane is, man, I'm not gonna say it's a 10, but it's as close to that as you can get.
Yeah, one of these days I think I really need to like, because that's another conversation too, dude, that I'm just like, so for those, I should have mentioned this during the Wheel of Time segment. For those of you that don't know, IGN, being IGN, has given the Wheel of Time Season 2, 2 of the episodes have received 9s from them. And at this point, it's why I've been somewhat militant from the time that we started this podcast, that I don't like giving things numbers ratings because they're pointless. So for IGN, let's say that IGN gives an episode of Wheel of Time a 9, and then, you know, something that I really like a lot, let's say episode 3 of Arcane was also given a 9. My question would be, okay, how do you qualify both of these getting a 9? Like, I need these broken down into like, what is it that led you to give this episode this score?
Yeah.
What was it? What was it about what led up to this? What was it about this specific episode?
What are the metrics you're using?
Yeah, exactly. And that's where a lot of the problem comes in for me, because I'm just like, I'm very confused about these two things that you have given a 9. It's like, you don't need to write me like a 10-page essay, like enough of a breakdown of, because I can tell you so for instance, like I would give, I don't know what my actual score would be for Arcane, but it would be very high. And a big portion of that, those first 3 episodes, and especially episode 3, it's a really, really cool arc that leads to a payoff that is the reason that certain characters become who they are for the rest of that season and probably for the rest of the show. It influences actions, right? So you see that progression throughout the series of characters making specific choices, and a lot of it leads back to things that happen in those first 3 episodes, and specifically that 3rd episode. It's like, I remember, I wouldn't call it an argument, but I remember I had hopped into a stream back when Arcane was still sort of like relevant, like season 1 was, and they were kind of talking about Jinx as a character and how she didn't make a lot of sense, or like her actions didn't make sense. And I literally was like, guys, Jinx saw her parents murdered in front of her. I was like, you don't think that would have some kind of effect on the way that she acts further down the line? And one of them was like, yeah, I guess so. And the other 2 were like, I don't know. And I'm like, you're telling me that it's not believable that someone would potentially come out troubled when she, as a small child, saw the 2 most important people in her life murdered in front of her, and then caused the death of essentially a father figure as a small child.
Yep.
It's like, it's just not, this is what I'm talking about. It's like, we got to be like fair in the way that we look at things. It's like, if the evidence is presented to you, it's like, until you can give me evidence to the contrary of this is what we have to go with.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really clear with that show, because they do a really good job of laying all of that out. And I think that One Piece does a really good job with a lot of that too. I really do. I mean, like Usopp, again, I think he's probably the weakest of the crew so far for me. And I think some of that is just because I relate to everybody else's stories a little bit more. I really, I think, is it Sanji? Let me make sure I'm getting this right.
The
yeah,
guy
Sanji.
with blonde hair.
I think he's my favorite character. Now, he and Zoro together, I really like it. It feels like old school, the way that and some people will understand this reference, but it reminds me of Angel and Spike from Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Just they're frenemies, kind of.
Yes.
They both recognize their skill set, but they kind of hate each other. Now, and in that, there's also sort of a love triangle as well, but I don't think we're gonna get that in this. I don't think that's even part of the anime, really. Like, typically with most Japanese writing, those like love triangles and even like love stories, unless it's specifically like a romance story, they're hinted at sometimes, and maybe by the end of a show, certain characters will end up together, but typically it's not a will they, won't they for 10 seasons, and then finally something happens.
Right.
It's very much about the plot and the motivations of the characters, and not typically about 2 of the characters falling in love while all of the motivation stuff is going on as well.
Right.
So unless the show decides to divert heavily from the source material, which from what I've heard they wanted to do, I think they wanted to try to do a thing with Nami and Zoro, And I think the original creator of One Piece, he was like, no, we're not doing that. Like, he had a lot of control in what was going on with this. So, but yeah, man, I really like it. I think it's a little. I think the pacing's a little slow in the beginning, but the anime's a little slow in the beginning too. It's for me, it's not the easiest thing to get into. I don't know how you kind of like. Were you
One Piece wasn't?
Yeah, One Piece. Were you like in it from the very beginning, or did it take a little while for it to warm up for you?
It took. Let's see. It took for me. I started to warm up to it more in the second episode.
Okay.
The
Yeah.
first episode didn't pull me in. The second episode did, and I probably wouldn't have continued. I'm thankful that I did, and I probably wouldn't have continued it after the first episode if it wasn't for my keeper wanting to watch the next episode.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, and I definitely think one of the things I liked about it is the morality behind it. I enjoy the main character Luffy and his kind of happy, positive outlook on everything.
Yeah.
And the fact that too, he's, with Kobe in the beginning, that's his name, right? Kobe. With Kobe in the beginning, he's like, I'm not going to force you to stay with me on my crew. I'm going to I'll allow you, not allow you, but you're fine to take your own,
forge your own
choice,
path.
Right?
Yeah. Yep. I like that quite a bit. And it works. It would, I think that you can make, the claim that a lot of that is because of the influences in Luffy's life.
Mm-hmm.
We see later on that there were people who wanted him to be his own man, and there were people who wanted to force him down a specific path. And it would be incredibly hypocritical of Luffy to say that, Colby needed to come with him and needed to be a pirate, rather than him being like, no, forge your own path, find your own way. This is what I believe my destiny is supposed to be. And, I love that, like, the guy that plays him, is so over the top, and he really kind of understands the sort of like anime trope of what, a hero in one of these shows is like. 'Cause like Naruto and, Black Clover and a number of other animes, like the characters are very similar in that way. They're a little too, they're naive in some respects, and they have to go through a lot of beatings essentially to get to where they want to be. But they never, it's like you were talking about, they have that positive attitude, that kind of like never give up. Black Clover and Asta being like a more recent example. His whole thing is like constantly pushing past his limits to become better. And that's the stuff you're talking about, dude. Part of it might just be that it's like, it's so nice to see something that isn't just like dour and like
nihilistic.
Yeah, blaming a certain group of people for the victim mentality.
And all that stuff. It's nice to actually see some positivity out there and creativity. I mean, the way this world seems is that there's very little land, like it's kind of, for lack of a better word, in the central location, and then there's this water spread or ocean spread all throughout. Each of there's just, I can appreciate, even if I disagree in a lot of the ways they portray things, I enjoyed the creativity behind each of the characters. I really enjoy the motivations. We actually get to understand each character's motivation, their backstory, and how their current decisions all make sense based off what happened in their past.
Mm-hmm.
The narrative flows. It really picks up after the first episode for sure, for me at least. And you get a bit more in the second episode, and then really that fourth episode's a sweet spot in this show.
Yes, I think that's where it really starts picking up, and as long as they maintain a lot of what they're doing with this, I'm really looking forward to a second season.
I am too,
especially now that we have the characters established. Because I think I don't think if I was to like I don't think I could knock points for this, but one of the things that I think is a weakness of the season is that we really don't get the crew together until close to the end, like the four of them. And I know there are more people, more crewmates that I'm sure will be introduced as the show goes on. And I am hoping to actually sit down and start making my way through the anime. It's on my list, but there are a lot of episodes of this.
I am good.
A lot of episodes.
I'm actually fine with the crew not getting together till the end. And you know, what I don't want to happen is we get into the second season and they split them all up.
Oh, I don't think they'll do it. It's the
that's like the
Guardians of the Galaxy 2
the
problem.
Galaxy trope. Yeah. And so I do like that each villain is unique as well and has their own character. My favorite one being Mihawk, the guy with the gigantic sword. I enjoy, and this is the thing too, is like everything makes sense. No one's just a Mary Sue or Zorro, even though he has this trauma from his past of losing his best friend. When he fights Mihawk, he doesn't automatically win just because of that and just because he's been training for this long time. No, this is somebody he's going to have to keep on training to overcome to be able to get to his level and beyond it. You know what I mean? He's not just. If this was Disney Star Wars, he would have defeated Mihawk then. Like it would have been the race situation.
Mihawk probably would have been a woman.
Yeah, that's true too.
Or he would have been, and then Nami's character would have just constantly been winning and teaching the boys all of the lessons.
She actually had weaknesses and stuff, and I'm glad to.
She breaks, dude. She's like, I really want to watch this again.
She broke through in those last few episodes a lot, and it was. I'm glad they kept the arc of the story is very well told.
And there are, she makes lots of mistakes. She's naive, and she's an interesting character because she comes off as being very sly, very clever. She does all of these different things. You have the episode with Usopp's lady friend, whose name I keep forgetting, Kaya. And it sort of breaks Nami down a little bit. It's sort of that little bit of her starting to show her true colors. But then we come to find out that she's been manipulated this whole time, and she trusted someone that she never should have trusted, and it shows a massive amount of weakness in her, and it causes a major problem for her at the end of the season, and her breakdown and the way that Luffy comes to sort of lift her back up. And that's what's so cool about the show, is that everything that the characters do in it, even if you're not into it, everything makes sense.
Yep, everything makes sense. And you know what else makes sense too? Go ahead, sorry.
I was going to say, they're not acting out of character randomly for the sake of the plot moving forward. Like we were, with the whole Ahsoka thing, where all of a sudden we get an episode where she's in this world between worlds, and we're finding out that maybe she's depressed or something, and that's not something that we, she's been very confident and seems to know exactly what she needs to do and where she needs to go, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh no, that's not exactly what's going on. That sucks. And what's great about this, no matter which character it is in here, their weaknesses are well defined.
Yep.
Sometimes from the minute that you meet them. It doesn't take long for you to realize, okay, Luffy is overconfident. He has reasons for it, but his overconfidence almost gets him killed a number of times.
Yep. And I love, too, the weakness of his... And you're exactly right. The strengths are counteracted by their weaknesses, and even their powers have weaknesses, too. And so with Luffy, if seawater gets splashed on him, it ruins the effect from the devil's fruit on him, and
Mm-hmm.
he can die. That's correct, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
And it's his kryptonite, and it's worked so much, dude. Thank you for bringing that up, because that was something I was thinking about in the show. It's actually something that an anime that is currently on the air did recently, but I won't talk about it right now because it's too spoilery for how long the episode's been out. But when you have a character like Superman, for instance, or Luffy is a great example, where he's borderline invincible.
Yep.
At least from what we know right now. I'm sure that'll get more developed as time goes on now. And everyone remember that this is coming from someone who has never seen the anime, and then someone who's only seen about 5 or 6 episodes of it and is just familiar with the source material. We don't have like a whole lot of like insight into what happens later
I'm just
on.
gonna go ahead and say I'm not watching 1,000 episodes. I'm checked out of that. I'm good.
Yeah, you know.
I enjoy, and maybe I'll change my mind if it keeps going.
It's not what I would suggest for you to start with. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, dude, I know, and I've mentioned this to you, but I know people who are, it's like, oh, I'm new to anime. What should I watch? And someone will go One Piece, and it's like, stop. Please stop. Yeah. Like, that's not, are you just actively trying to get them to not watch anime?
Yeah.
It's a huge investment, man.
There was something else I was gonna say. I enjoy too how each of the ships have their own character and they're all new.
Oh yes,
and creative as well. That's a great and interesting aspect of this show too.
The villains are all weird and gross and fun, and the show just it knows what it is.
Oh, speaking of villains, Arlong. I enjoy the aspect of the fish people have been this people group that's been enslaved, and now there's some prejudice. There's prejudice from a long history of not being treated right, and now they act as if they're superior to everyone else now too.
Fish supremacy.
Yeah.
They're gross looking too, dude. They did like his one. There's one of his of Arlong's crewmates, the one that I think Usopp fights at the end, where he blows him up with that. Every time that guy was on screen, I was like, ugh. I was like, I don't even want to look at him.
This show has a charisma about it.
Yeah.
It has an endearing quality with it. There's a good moral to each episode, and for the whole season arc.
I just want a spin-off series with Sanji and Zoro. Give me like a 3-episode miniseries where they just are hanging out on an adventure together.
Give me a 3-episode miniseries of Mihawk.
Oh yeah, he's cool, man. They do a really good job with him. So this is a great way to talk about suspension of disbelief as well. Stuff is introduced in the show, and they don't feel the need to over-explain why it's there. It's just a part of this world, and you kind of just go, well, that's weird. You're like, all right. I mean, I guess that's just what it is. Versus,
but then you pick up on it. Like,
well, sure.
They start to establish the rules of the world.
Well, I was thinking more with like the snail phones.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, there's stuff in it. Because sure, you're right, and it's a great place to transition into is the things that probably need to be explained to keep things grounded are, because we can't just, it's like we were saying, you can't just have a show with like, well, you can do it. I mean, there are shows that are written this way, but there has to be something interesting about the show. But for something like this, Luffy needs a weakness. It's going to get boring after a while if he just constantly is overcoming every situation that he gets into, and he's not learning from mistakes that he's made.
Right.
He's selfish. I don't know if a lot of people kind of picked up on it. He's very self-motivated in the things that he's doing, and his reasons for bringing the crew along are very selfish and not necessarily at the beginning about the crew.
Yeah, it's about so he can become great and find the One Piece.
Yeah, he needs a crew
That's
so
he
can become king of the.
on that.
Yeah, he can become king of the pirates so he can find the One Piece. But as the show progresses and he gets to know characters and characters get hurt or other things happen, you begin to see him caring, and he does the actor does a really good job with his emotional switch where he goes from being happy-go-lucky to I've had enough of you, it's time to end this. He's great. I really like the guy. I think he does a wonderful job. There's like small critiques in this that I think I could hardly even call him nitpicking, but it's stuff like Luffy's younger actor, when they do flashbacks, speaks better English than he does.
Oh yeah.
I was like, all right. I mean, again,
it's not stuff that's world breaking.
No, you overlook it, but it's a little funny that it's like as a kid he's speaking like perfect English, and then it's not. His accent comes through quite a bit more in the in adult Luffy.
But all the acting in this is really good.
Yeah, the characters are like wonderful. Zoro. Okay, again, it's this show is a great example of a lot of the stuff working correctly that we complain about with other things. You have Zoro is a stoic character, but he's not emotionless. It's not as if things don't break through. That he can't have a quippy relationship with Sanji. Let's see.
And have these emotional moments regarding his past.
Yeah, you have a woman who has flaws, which is like, it's wild to say that that's like unique as a character trait. But yeah, Nami's great. She has many, many flaws. A nice redemption arc. There's like other small things. This actually had a surprisingly big budget. And I hope that over time you get to see some of this stuff start to just like look a little bit more like a high budget production. There are just like times that it looks a little bit cheap to me, but I love the set design for the most part. When they're in Kaya's mansion, it's like incredibly oppressive. That was like the word that kind of came to mind. Like there's so much stuff everywhere, and it's all. It's like you get this idea that her parents were kind of hoarders, and that they just like spent money because they had the money to spend, and Kaya isn't like that. It's something that she's not really interested in. She's very different from kind of what you see that life, and then it works really well because Nami assumes that Kaya's a stuck-up rich girl. And come to find out, she's like, oh no, she's like, most of this stuff doesn't mean anything to me. She's like, take whatever you want. She's like, and then she has a line where it's like, I'd rather give it to charity anyway. And she's like, yeah, I'm not charity. And it's like, well, and that is a great moment of weakness for Nami because clearly Kaya wasn't talking about her, but that's the way that she took it because there's a part of her that's broken. And it's those things. It's those character moments that make up for maybe a sword flippy flops a little too much in one scene, or maybe there's some inconsistency with the voices of the characters, depending on these little world inconsistencies or whatever that just aren't really that big of a deal when you have something that's as solid as this show. It's just and it's fun, and it knows what it is, and it's not ashamed of what it is, and it's not fourth wall breaking all the time like the Marvel stuff is to tell you that they know too that it's really goofy. You know what I mean? Like it's not like one of the pirates picks up a snail telephone and then Usopp's like, huh, like looks directly at the screen. He's like, isn't that weird? Like there's that stuff doesn't exist in this. They just exist in this world, and it goes a long way to help you believe the world that you are currently watching.
Agreed. I don't really have anything else myself, man.
I'm trying to think if there was anything else about the show. I mean, I highly recommend it. I think that
agreed. It's well worth your time.
It's well worth the 8 episodes. It's a great way that especially Joseph being someone who probably won't watch the anime, It's a great way to be able to get into a story that maybe before had a very steep entry. You know, you have to pay a high price at this point to be a dedicated One Piece fan if you haven't been keeping up with it since you were, younger or whatever. Or if you just, it's like, even, I've watched a lot of stuff. Like Naruto is a very big series if you're counting the original and Shippuden. But One Piece just puts it to shame. It puts most of the stuff that One Piece is so long that I think most of the stuff, since I started watching it again last year, I think you could fit a lot of the stuff that I've watched into this show. You could watch Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood probably over 30 times, and you still wouldn't be through the number of episodes that are in One Piece. So
yeah, that's a crazy amount.
It's big, man. And I hope that this is. There's a couple things that I hope come out of this. I hope that, just like with Arcane, Season 2 lives up to expectations and they don't muck it up. I hope that creatives, especially Netflix, and I have a dog in this fight for a reason, which I'll explain in a second. Netflix takes the correct lessons away from adapting this and the failures that they've had in the past. Because Mark Millar, who I'm sure Jake in particular is tired of me talking about at this point, but there's a reason for it. He legitimately, I think, is one of the greatest living writers at this point, like creative writers at this point. There aren't a lot of people doing the kind of stuff that he is. He has a sort of like running contract with Netflix to adapt his material. The Magic Orders.
Mark Miller and Blink-182, according to Lupa.
Oh, Millar. It's not Miller.
Oh, Millar. Sorry.
He's Scottish, I believe.
I'm just going to call his name Miller, though.
Don't know. What if people started calling you Natchins? Joseph Natchins.
He's already Miller for me. Too late.
He has a lot of really, really cool stories. Stuff that being adapted into movies or television, whatever the case may be, would work really well. And I'm just worried that they can't handle it. They don't have the proven track record for me to be like, I am convinced that you guys are actually going to put the love and care into a potential live action for this the way that it needs to be. I also think they're going about it wrong. He's been writing since I think 2004. That's when Wanted came out, the graphic novel, or the original run of Wanted came out in 2004, and they made that the movie, which a lot of people like. It's in name only, really related to the main character has the same name, but in name only. They're very, very different pieces of entertainment. And I think the biggest problem with Wanted in particular right now is that you wouldn't be able to. It's pretty edgy. Maybe I've mentioned this on the show before, but it's one of those things that even that I'd be like, they could probably tone down some of the stuff that goes on in that story and maintain the source material without they don't have to screw it up completely, but there's probably some stuff in there that's I don't think most audiences are going to latch onto this if you go hardcore into this story. It's pretty edgy. But he's got some really, really cool stuff, and then it all culminates in the stuff that he's writing currently. And it would be awesome to be able to see Kick-Ass and Kingsman and Wanted and all these characters that show up in Big Game in a live action version of that it all builds up to this thing. And then to be honest, dude, partially because if they did it correctly, you would get a lot of those same moments that people talked about, those water cooler moments of Game of Thrones. But the thing is that it has to be done properly, like with any show.
Right.
If you adapt it properly, the potential is there to be like, holy smokes, like, have you been watching the season of whatever? Can you believe this thing happened or whatever? It's that kind of stuff. It could have the same kind of fan following as something like those first those 3 seasons of Daredevil did on Netflix back when they like actually cared about what they were doing to some degree. It's that kind of stuff, and that's why I'm nervous, not just for and think about it, like Arcane and One Piece are both Netflix properties, but to some degree they're the exception and not the rule.
Exactly. That's a good way to put it.
There's so much stuff that Netflix has just dropped the ball on that I'm like, Millar needs to have like a lot of creative control over this stuff. I think in order for it to at least from a story perspective work out properly. And his like cast of characters is incredibly diverse. So he's got that going for him already. I mean, it goes right up that alley of like, you just automatically check that box, and it's not because
and it makes sense too.
Well, yeah, he's just writing these. Yeah, he's just writing these characters. It's just like this guy is, mixed. He's half black, half white, and that's just, from a physical perspective, that's the character that I'm doing here, And then you have like Dave Luzinski from Kick-Ass. He's just this, kind of nerdy high schooler kid. He's white. This white kid. And then like Hit Girl, who I think is one of his more interesting characters. Like she's got massive like run of stuff, dude. I'm actually surprised that they never spun that off into her own movie series. Because there's like 4 books of her in Kick-Ass, and then she's got like 4 or 5 books where she travels around the world, like doing what she does. And she was always the most popular character when that movie came out. So all that being said, it's like there's so much potential in that world for them to do all of that. But like I'm at this point now where I'm like, man, you're rolling the dice every time Netflix puts something out that's like, and I have no interest in getting hyped up for something and then being like, oh, what have they done? It bugs me a little bit. It bugs me just a little bit. All right, dude. Well, we will end the show there, unless you have anything else to say.
No, I am all out, my man.
And I guess we'll just figure out next week.
Yes, we will.
We're almost done with this stuff. But you know what comes out in October?
Tell me.
We probably don't have to watch it. I don't really have any interest in seeing it. But Loki comes out in October.
Oh gosh, I ain't watching that bull crap.
He's like, I saw a commercial for it before we started the show. I
know people who told me that they liked season 1 of Loki, and I'm like, okay, that's all I say.
it's for the best. Yeah, we'll see if that holds up. It's funny because like nobody's talking about it anymore,
Mm-hmm.
And there's some other stuff coming out. I gotta try to go see The Creator this weekend if I can find a showing.
Agree on that. Well, we'll have to figure out what we're gonna talk about for Monday.
Yeah.
I guess this week we can talk about it.
So, for sure. All right. Well, thank you all so much for listening to episode 151 of The Underground. We will be back next week with another episode and more topics to discuss. And you can listen to me go even more into a spiral of depression over Wheel of Time and Ahsoka, and having to think about them more.
Heck
but
yeah.
until then, y'all take it easy.
See ya.
This thing. Are we still
All right,
live?
man.
I now, in order to